Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my RWBY Volume 8 Episode 4 breakdown. Now, before I get started, I need to explain why this is coming out a day later than the other two have. So, my weekend is very hectic in terms of recording and editing, because at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning I do my Hero Academia read through, and then I edit it Saturday, upload it Saturday night, and then release it on a Monday. On 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. on a Sunday, I record my RWBY reaction. Then Sunday, I'm writing the script for this to be done on a Monday evening and then released 4 a.m. Tuesday. However, this past weekend, I recorded my Hero Academia video normally, but I was out all Saturday, so I had a shorter amount of time to edit it. I then did my RWBY recording and then exported the My Hero Academia video while I was sleeping. I woke up Sunday, files corrupted, and I can't even get the original to work. So that means I had to release that a day late because I recorded it Monday evening, which means that this got pushed back as well. But anyway, I also want to give a quick warning that this episode of RWBY really made me hype, like more than the other three combined. And some of that may come through in this breakdown, though I'll try and keep some of it in check. I'm also going to see if there are any parts of the episode that don't need to be talked about when I'm actually reading through the script. But if it just is a run through of the entire episode, then obviously I failed that. Anyway, this episode starts much like how the second one did, with a conversation within the Atlas prison cells. Though this one is between Robin and Crow, not Robin and Jacques. She's reminiscing about a fight between Joanna and herself, which I think may have been when she was recruiting Joanna, and she was reminiscing about this in an attempt to liven up the mood for Crow. And seemingly Jacques, as much as she hates him, she did check to see what his reaction was after she realized that Crow wasn't smiling or laughing at her story. But Jacques was too busy trying to swat the fly that made it into his cell. Robin then makes a comment about how Ironwood should have paid for better entertainment, which finally gets a laugh out of Crow, but only a small one before he's looking back down at Clover's pin in his hand. Robin gives her condolences again for what happened to Clover and tries to reassure Crow that it wasn't his fault. But Crow insists that it is, at least partially. Now, nothing Crow says is wrong here, and if I have enough time, I'll try and edit together a visual representation of what he's saying and the scene it's referring to during that fight, just to show that, well, it actually happened the way he's saying it.
I made a deal with the darkness.
So let's say we put the kid to bed and then finish it.
And he paid the price. Clover wouldn't let up. Wasn't planning on it. Could have worked together against Tyrion if Clover just...
This doesn't deter Robin's attempts to comfort him, because she knows a little something about the semblance being the cause of friendship problems. Because Crow says that I finally had a friend who I didn't have to worry about my semblance hurting. And Robin says, I may know a little something about that, because if people think you're going to reveal their deepest secrets, they kinda don't want to get close to you. And Crow says, I hadn't thought about it like that. And honestly, neither had I. Like, now that she's said it, I completely see that. Like, everyone lies. Whether it's to protect people, to hurt people, or just to get what they want. Everyone lies. No one wants those lies to come out. So if there's someone with the ability to not so much reveal the ultimate truth of your lie, but to inform people that you are lying, it does sort of make sense that, yeah, a lot of people wouldn't want to be close to someone like that. Now, before these two can bond anymore, they're interrupted by what's being brought back to his cell by Harriet and Marrow, the former of whom notices that Crow still has Clover's badge and tells him that he's not going to be allowed to keep that. Crow reminds her that he didn't kill Clover, but all Harriet needs for evidence is the fact that Crow's weapon had Clover's blood on it. Robin tells Harriet to open the cells if she wants to know what really happened, and I love what she says after Harriet says no. She calls out the fact that Harriet, she doesn't want to know the truth. She wants someone to be mad at. And that's easier than taking a look at what side she's actually on. Because it's easier to be mad at the person who's right in front of you that you have in custody than the serial killer who got away, because you can't actually tell them that you're mad at them. And putting the blame on someone else allows you to be ignorant towards the causation from your superior. Harriet looks to move towards the cell control panel, but is stopped by Marrow. And it's easy to read this as she was going to pick a fight with Robin, given Harriet's personality and her earlier threat to do so. But the look on her face when Marrow stops her, and the way she walks away, could also be read as her considering Robin's words, before putting on a facade of her normal expression to hide that from Marrow, because when she's looking at the control panel, her face isn't anger. When she looks to Marrow, she quickly frowns again and pushes past him. Marrow again hesitates before leaving, looking at the heroes with a sad expression, much like he did with Team RWBY and, well, Amity Team. So, this is really leading towards the Marrow betraying the Aesop's theory, and I hope that happens. It also seems that they're pushing Crow and Robin together, which, whether it's platonic, whether it's romantic, I don't care. I like both of them as individuals. They have good chemistry together platonically and relationship wise. I personally, main Crow ship is Snowbird. However, Robin is closer to Crow's age than Winter. Winter being in her mid-20s, Crow being in his 40s, Robin being about 30s. So I can see why they'd push Robin rather than Winter, because she's so much younger than Crow. It then cuts to Mantelteam chasing the Hound through the mountains in the tundra, heading towards the Grim Whale. Ren notices that the bikes weren't built to be used out in the tundra, as the cold is making the engines shut down. And Yang makes a throwaway comment about how it would be great if one of them could fly, which gives John an idea. He pulls back to alongside Ren and expands his shield, telling Ren to jump on, and then uses the gravity dust to launch Ren into the air, who then uses the grapple feature of one of his Stormflower to attach to one of the Hound's legs. Now, why he doesn't just retract the cable then and there to bring himself up to the Hound, I don't know. Maybe he does have to actually pull back to retract it, rather than there actually being a button on the weapon to pull it back in. I'm going to assume that's the case. There could also be the fact that Ren's just trying to slow it down to bring the others a chance to get up to it, rather than trying to climb on its back while it's flying, holding Oscar, and attempt to take Oscar away from it while it's still flying. The Hound proceeds to slam Ren against the walls of the pass a couple times, and John gives him the ever helpful tip of just hold on. And let me just say, Ren, throughout this entire sequence, he's back to his old self, because he's saying stuff that Volume 1 or 2 Ren would say. He's not got the harshness in his voice that he had last season. And it's a stark contradiction to what happens later in the episode. Ren attempts to anchor himself to one of the rocks on the ground, rather than one of the rock spires coming up from the ground, but this only slows them down temporarily until the Hound manages to make the rock bounce in such a way that it dislodges the grappling hook around it. Yang then notices an upper path and rides up the ramp to shoot at the Hound on its level, but this just causes him to drop Oscar into his arms, and he uses the ghostly whale. Wait, this isn't Danny Phantom? Which instantly summons the Sentinels and a few Terexes to their location. Now, I'll admit, this next sequence, when doing my reaction, I stopped processing events about halfway through it. Jean is riding through the lower pass, chopping the heads off of any sentinel that gets close enough, and slicing one in half down the middle, until he misses one, which spits its green acid at one of his engines. Two sentinels then begin circling each other, like we saw in Volume 7, and they slam into the underside of the back of Jean's bike. However, Jean saw this coming, so he stands up on the bike and uses the impact to launch himself forward. He flips, bounces off another sentinel with the gravity dust in his shield, and then lands up on the upper path, just in time for Yang to scoop him up onto her bike. They then dodge the sentinels on the upper path before using one of Jean's shield grenades to ramp over a Terex that lands in front of them. However, they then notice that there's a cliff in front of them, so Yang tries to turn her bike sideways to skid it. However, this causes it to flip over and slam into a rock, and Jean and Yang go tumbling towards the cliff face. So Jean pulls out his sword, stabs it in the ground, trying to stop their fall. However, just as it sticks in the ground, the jolt causes him to lose his grip, and they go over. However, Ren, who had been physically climbing up his grapple line, he lets go of the Grim to turn around and grapple one of his Stormflowers onto the hilt of the sword and one onto Jean's leg, so that they can dangle on the side of the cliff, and then uses his semblance to mask them from any Grim attack. Now, there's a small Amity team scene that raises several questions for me, and I hope we won't have to wait too long for them to be answered. The scene starts with Weiss knocking on the front door to the Schnee Manor, and Whitley opening it. Not very happy to see that Weiss has returned with a bunch of fugitives. When he gets called out about worrying about reputation at a time like this, he reveals to them that since Jacques was arrested almost 24 hours prior, all the staff in the mansion have left, and Willow, she's been locked in her room, which means Whitley, for the first time in his life, has been on his own, and not only that, on his own for almost a full day, and likely he doesn't know how to prepare proper food for himself, so who knows whether he's actually eaten in this time. Weiss starts to have a go at him, but Ruby steps between them and tells Whitley that they'll get out of his hair once Nora has rested up a bit, because she's in bad shape. So Whitley, he offers to help. He says, "What do you want me to do?" But Weiss sends him to his room. As he leaves, Weiss and May, who's carrying Nora, head off to a different room, while Ruby stands in the doorway staring into the distance. And upon voicing her concerns about the others, Blake suggests giving Yang a call. But Ruby reveals that she already has, and Yang hasn't picked up. Now, like I said, this scene has raised several questions for me. The first is, how did Amity Team actually get to the Schnee Manor? Like, we know they flew the airship and landed in the front yard. You can actually see the airship in the scene, but how did they manage to do so without being picked up by any of the other ships? Because Ironwood knew they were in the military compound. There were ships flying around Atlas, yet none of them stopped them. The ship would have shown up on radar anyway, even if May was cloaking it, so they could have just fired at the ship and brought it down. The next question is, why was Weiss being so harsh to Whitley? Like, yeah, I mean, he can be a shit, but given what I said, it's understandable that he's annoyed. He does actually offer to help, which is something that Whitley, even last season, wouldn't have done. Or we're made to believe that Whitley in last season wouldn't have done. I do, however, think that someone is going to have a talk with Whitley while they're in the manor. Because it'll either be Weiss talking to her little brother, voicing her mother's concerns about getting him out of there, not giving up on him and being a loving sister, or Weiss will go talk to her mother, who, despite telling Weiss not to give up on her brother, she locked herself away in her room rather than looking after said little brother. And while this is happening, maybe Ruby will go talk to Whitley, because I find it very surprising she was able to pacify him so quickly and even get him to offer to help, because he could have just said, "I'll stay out of your way," but he says, "What do you expect me to do?" Finally, this is less of a question and more of a what if scenario, because I've been saying since the end of Volume 7 that I think there's going to be a showdown at the Schnee Manor. And now that Amity Team is in the Schnee Manor, it is seeming more and more likely that this will happen. However, I was always saying that it would be during the grim invasion of Atlas, where Willow will give her life defending Whitley from the Grim and showing off some of her summons. However, what if it's not the Grim? It's the Atlesian military. Maybe the ship didn't go up there unnoticed. Maybe Ironwood is sending a battalion of soldiers to storm the manor, and Amity team plus Whitley will have to make a quick escape, and maybe Willow will still go down fighting. We then cut back to Mantle team as they have managed to make it back to Yang's crashed bike, and Jean is attempting to get a signal out for assistance from the people like Joanna or Fiona or any of the other huntsmen in Mantle. Yang is picking up the scattered nuts and bolts from her bike, and Ren stands off on his own, almost making the exact shot from the opening, just subbing out Nora for Yang. We then see them moving in the direction towards Mantle with one of their bikes. Now, I'm saying this is most likely Ren's, as we didn't see it sustain any damage, while one of Jean's engines got melted, and Yang's one crashed, so it seems it would be in the most usable state, just needing to reinforce the engines a little. And Mantle team, they're looking for an outpost that Ren spotted while hanging from the Hound. Ren is back to his Volume 7 self, and when questioned by Yang, he replied that he only got the directions before he had to cut himself from the Hound to save them. Yang and Ren get into a heated argument, and neither of them make incorrect points in this argument. Ren is still under the impression that they weren't ready to be huntsmen. I mean, they did only get 1 year instead of 3 or 4. I can never remember if it's 3 or 4. So Yang brings up, what about Haven? What about the Leviathan? What about getting the relic to Atlas? We were obviously capable of doing that. And Ren counters by saying, yeah, and then we lost the relic and made a ton of bad decisions for very important choices. Yang says that if they didn't do anything, things would have been much worse, but Ren asks how. They're stuck in the tundra. The lamp is gone, Oscar's gone, they have no plan, they have no army. Yang mentions that they still have Penny, and Ren says that by keeping her, they're trapping Atlas within Salem's immediate reach, which is true. Yang asks Ren if he thinks giving Ironwood what he wants would really result in anything different. Like, there's no way Amity would be able to escape Salem. So, what good would giving Ironwood what he wants be? And Ren replies by saying, he doesn't know, but they shouldn't be the ones who have to make this decision. He brings up that Ruby's just a kid. He's just an orphan, and when Jean, who's been trying to get them to stop arguing this whole time, tells them once again to stop, he turns around and calls him out for cheating his way into Beacon. Which really shocked me during my reaction, because I assumed Jean had only told Pyrrha, and of course was overheard by Cardin, who then told his team, but there was nothing said about Ren and Nora ever finding out about this. Now, I love that you can actually see Ren realizing that he went too far with that comment, because after he says it, it zooms in on his face and he looks shocked. And then he looks sad. John just cuts any more chance of argument off there by saying, if you don't think we should be huntsmen, fine. I'm getting out of the cold. Yang has one last thing to say to Ren though, asking him, is your goal to push everyone away? Which, the answer is yes. For reasons I explained in my reaction, we then cut to a different member of Mantle Team, as Ozpin is finally able to wake Oscar up, telling him, don't panic, we're going to be fine. Oscar is confused at this for a second before he looks up and sees Salem standing in the shadows, manipulating a cloud of smoke, which, when it zooms in, you can actually see it takes the form of hers and Ozpin's 4 children. It even has their laugh as it dissipates. And Salem has a real possessive way of speaking about Ozma, referring to him as my Ozma multiple times throughout this scene. It's actually the first time we've heard someone, including Salem, refer to him by his original name, though this is likely because the only person who would know him as Ozma is Salem, and they couldn't really have her refer to him as such in volumes 1, 3, 4 or 5 because no one would know who she was talking to, and it also would have spoiled their shared origin. So Oscar, he tries to pretend to be Ozpin, but Salem, she's probably the one person that this was guaranteed to fail upon. And it's also interesting to note that now Aaron Dismuke, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who is Oscar's voice actor, has now done 3 different voices for Oscar. The first being his real voice, that being Oscar's real voice. The second being the emulation of Ozpin's voice for when Ozpin is taken over Oscar's body, because that is actually Oscar's voice actor saying those words, not Ozpin's voice actor. And now we have this halfway voice of Oscar trying to imitate Ozpin. Being lied to obviously pisses Salem off, as she forcefully grabs his face and tells him that you're not fully Ozpin yet. I know this. But she quickly calms down and suggests that, how about the 2 of us? We have a better working relationship than me and him. She asks him if he knows where the beacon relic is, and he says, that's not something I know about. And sounds like, yeah, he would keep that as hidden as much as possible. So she instead asks him how to activate the lamp. Oscar tries the same tactic of saying, all the questions have been used, what's the point? But, like the boy who cried wolf, it no longer works. And we get our first glimpse at old world magic being used in an offensive capability, because Salem summons a ball of magic in front of her and shoots beams from it, hitting Oscar square in the chest, causing him immense pain and singeing his clothes, because when she zooms in, the front of his torso where those beams hit is full black. Salem approaches him again, commenting on the fact that Oscar, he lost so easily. Like-minded souls indeed. So Oscar, he says outright, I'm not going to tell you anything. So Salem opens the door and in walks Hazel, who begins to beat Oscar up. It then cuts to a different part of the whale, as Cinder and Neo are waiting in a hallway to speak with Salem, but as she arrives, Cinder notices the hound before she can say what she wanted. When asked what that is, Salem refers to it as an experiment, and a successful one so far, which does not bode well for the heroes because it could mean that she's planning on making more of them. And Cinder, after hearing this, decides to continue asking what she wanted to, which is to search for the Winter Maiden. I love what Salem says here. She says, "You hear that, my pet? She thinks, she wants," as if she's done something to warrant me caring about either of those things. Which shows that Salem either doesn't think Cinder has atoned for her past failures yet, or she knows Cinder was lying about being the one to steal the relic. But this doesn't deter Cinder from asking her request again, only to be basically grounded to the whale by Salem. The next scene shows Cinder and Neo walking towards the hangar, with Cinder saying, "I just want to check on something. I know these kids better than she does. They wouldn't abandon their plans for Amity." Neo shows her reluctance to accompany Cinder because she's smart and doesn't really want to go against Salem. So Emerald steps out from wherever she was hiding and offers her services instead, saying that she's been working on her semblance. She can be of assistance. We also see in the background that there are these massive floating jellyfish things. I'm not sure if they're Grim or troop transports, so ground troops can get up to Atlas. We will just have to wait and see. The final cut of the episode takes us back to Mantle Team, as they've made it to the outpost and are now trying to get the heating system working, which they do very quickly. Jean confirms to Ren that he did cheat his way into Beacon, so I'm still confused as to whether Ren actually knew this, or from Jean telling him, or he overheard it somewhere. But he also says that it was the people around him that helped him get through it and to where he is now, and reminds Ren that he's got people like that around him too. He also tells Ren that by hiding how he's feeling, he's just going to make himself feel more and more alone. But Ren, he just walks outside. Yang and Jean have a brief exchange, and she starts fixing parts of the bike afterwards. However, he then stops to ask Jean how does he think she feels about me deciding to help Mantle instead of Atlas. Do you think she feels less about me? And Jean, he misunderstands this as Yang asking about RWBY. But it's all made very obvious that Yang was asking about Blake. Because she's like, yeah, RWBY, that's who I was talking about. Because Yang knows that as long as she's working to help people, there is no way RWBY would ever think badly about her course of action. There goes the argument that, oh, Yang cares more about what Blake thinks of her than her sister does. Oh, I didn't really have a second argument to go in this section, so, because that's the only argument that people think is valid. Yeah, when you're trying to prove a point, one argument is not enough. Anyway, back to the ending of the episode. Jean says that he wants to try and go to sleep, but he can't help thinking about Oscar. And Yang, she offers to take another worry off of Yon's mind by watching over Ren so he doesn't brood himself to death, which is a fun line. The last we see of the episode is the camera passing past Ren, who is sitting outside still, and continuing down the hills towards a crack in the ice. And suddenly, the crack gets larger, and the scene fades to black. Now, this was a really good episode. Like I said, in my opinion, better than the first three combined. And, well, this also got the most flack out of any of the episodes so far because, well, it had a Bumblebee scene in it. Look, I'm not a Bumblebee shipper. I just don't have a better ship for either Yang or Blake, so that, and the fact that Bumblebee is canon, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm okay with it. But with that being said, this is my 4 AM insightful lack of sleep in the past 3 days talk. I still really like this episode, and I can see me going back and watching it again on my own before the reactions come out on the weekend, so I'd advise you guys to do that too, because this is a really good episode. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one.